Hi everybody, it's me, The Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, The Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet-Karen Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet-Karen and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
With my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and today we have a very special episode with Ray Hernendez and Karen Christine Patrick of Free, and we'll tell you what that means in a minute. First of all, I want to read a little bit about Ray Hernendez, his bio to you. Ray's an experiencer and also an estate tax attorney with the IRS. He was previously the director of the Center for Sustainable Urban Development at the City University of New York and the director of the Office of Community Environmental Planning for the City of New York. He has attended Rutgers College, Cornell University, and was a PhD candidate at UC Berkeley in City and Regional Planning. He was also the recipient of a National Science Foundation PhD fellowship, and he resides with his family in Miami, Florida. One moment where I get Karen's bio. Karen Christine Patrick is a researcher and writer living in Texas, working in the areas of the experiencer phenomena, exopolitics, anomaly, and consciousness studies. She is a social media consultant to the group the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, which is also known as FREE. Karen acts as an administrator for that organization's group on Facebook. And she's the founding admin for the Earth Anomaly Research Society Facebook group. And she's a co-author of a upcoming book, or it is an existing book, called Paradimensional Space Art, a book about embedded ET communication in space agency images. And she's also an experiencer herself and a contactee, and has just published an ebook of downloaded and coded poetry called Thoughts Equal Matter. And would you like to say something about today's show?
Yes, I would love to. This is a show particularly about experiencers, paranormal, near-death experience, ET experiencers. And I know that many of you out there are experiencers, and the path that Ray Hernendez has followed to having an experience which opens up a whole new dimension of life for him. And what's happened, because he is a scientist, because he knows how to do statistics, he's taken beyond the anecdotes that we have from thousands and thousands of experiencers and subjected them to measurements so we can actually see what the trends are and what's really happening. Karen, our second experiencer, is among the individuals linked to the link of the extraterrestrials concerned with Earth that A.R. Borden had created, and in which A.R. let the other species know that we, the enlightened humans, are ready to have a peaceful planet. And the third experiencer here is a woman who is chosen by the Federation to periodically share the perspective of Earth's women, and I refer to Janet Kira Lessin. We're going to hear from all three of these experiencers.
Excellent. I just want to say one more thing, and then we're going to have Karen come on and tell us about free, and then we're going to give the ball to Ray, who was one of the co-founders. But let me tell you, there are likely millions of individuals worldwide who have had and continue to have contact experiences with non-human intelligent beings. The majority of these individuals fear discussing their experiences due to the ostracism and rejection they receive from the people in their social circles, including family, friends, and associates. They become private, reclusive, frequently depressed, and in many cases suffer from symptoms of post-traumatic stress due to the nature of some of their encounters. And a few will talk about it, but their revelations are highly self-centered and do not include, most times, the most important information, namely that which hurts them physically, emotionally, and again, socially. So that is behind one of the main reasons why Free was founded by Ray Hernendez and a couple others. He's the co-founder. And Karen, who is an admin for Free, will come on next and tell us a little bit about what is Free. And the Experiencers Liberation Day, October 1st. Go ahead, Karen Christine Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Very glad to talk about this topic, which kind of I just have to do something about it every day, it seems. And I'll let Ray tell a little bit more about Free. I'm going to start off with talking about the first annual Experiencer Liberation Day event, which we're going to talk about on the show. And basically, I wrote something up. Are you an experiencer, an abductee, or contactee of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional intelligences? Tired of keeping a low profile? Tired of the societal ridicule? On October 1st, 2015, the silence ends. You will be joined by other experiencers who will be coming out, or already have, that they are part of a planet-wide phenomenon of peer-to-peer exposure towards Earth becoming aware of its galactic neighbors. It's an all-day event, and various local and online efforts will be forthcoming as people share their human experiences of contact. And I'll give more information where people can find more information, but it is sponsored by the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, a wonderful organization started by Ray Hernendez and some other wonderful people. And Ray, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I just want to thank Sasha and you, Janet, for hosting these wonderful radio programs that you have that are putting experiencers together to communicate with each other, to share their experiences, and to inform humanity that these experiences are valid experiences that are very, very real. So first is my thanks to both of you. And then yes, it's definitely. We need like 100 of these shows. So if we could clone you 100 times, both of you.
Feel free any time to call us.
And then,
go ahead.
Most definitely. And then Karen, she's just a buzzsaw. She's filled with so much energy, so much love for humanity. We've been working together now, goodness, I think it was for more than 2 years, I think. And she really put our Facebook together. So many of the Experiencer projects revolve around the work that Karen is doing. She's just a blessing for the whole Experiencer movement. She knows so many people in the field, and she was there to assist me in the beginning when you have these types of experiences and there's no one to talk to. Karen was there, to share her experiences, to be a buddy for me, in the very beginning. So I just want to personally tell Karen that I love her, and I want to thank her so very much for the work that she does.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Thank you.
And I hope she recovers soon. She had a little injury, but it's just temporary. That's it, So she'll get better.
She will.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
we'd like you to kind of fill in everything for our listeners and tell us about how this started and how you got involved.
Yeah, how you were initiated into this change of consciousness.
I was initiated with a 2x4 over the head by an ET. A little bit about my background. I'm a typical overeducated. I was a typical overeducated material rationalist atheist. That means someone that you had to abide by the scientific method. You didn't believe in God or any spiritual aspects of reality, and so it was pretty much a listless life, with no purpose, no drive whatsoever. I always wanted to believe in a creator, not necessarily a God, but some type of creator and spirituality issues. But my academic background, the rationality of that approach, always dissuaded me from leaving first base. I was never into UFOs, the New Age stuff, ETs, aliens, none of that stuff. And then in March 4th of 2012, both my wife and I had an experience in our living room where basically this little craft appeared in the room, and which was a result of my wife praying all night, because the day before, on a Saturday evening, our 16-year-old dog became totally paralyzed. And we called our vet, and he says, look, from what you're telling me, he seems to have suffered a cerebral hemorrhage, a stroke, and I'll open up my office tomorrow to put her to sleep. So my wife did not sleep much that night. The whole night she was praying. She has a Catholic background. She was born and raised in Mexico and grew up in Mexico. And so in the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, the only thing the dog could do is bark and move her head, but not the rest of her body. So she was barking at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so we both got up. We thought that she had recovered, but no, she was still totally paralyzed. So my wife carried her down the stairs, and then down the stairs at 6 in the morning, she saw like a little craft floating in our living room, like 4 feet off the ground. And then she knelt down and started praying and said, basically, if you're a bad spirit, get the hell out. If you're a good spirit or an angel or even the Virgin Mary, stay and help with our dog. Her name is Nena, which means little girl in Spanish. So then these two green lights started flickering on and off in the craft, and from the side it shot out this white fluorescent light. And at that point she freaked out and she yelled for me. And I wouldn't, listen to her. So after a couple of minutes of her, yelling for me to go downstairs, she went upstairs and pulled me out of bed. Now, again, she wasn't scared. It was just like, you need to come downstairs and see this, that type of an approach. It wasn't like she was scared at all, And so when she then pulled me down the stairs, and I was a little upset because it was Sunday morning, 6 o'clock, I went to sleep. The last thing I wanted to do was to catch a little mouse for her. That's what I thought was downstairs. So when I got downstairs, immediately when we stepped on the bottom floor, when she stepped on the bottom floor, she disappeared, totally gone. And then what I'm going to tell you is not very rational, but if you talk to experiencers, they'll tell you in the presence of these beings, I like to call them ETs because I personally hypothesize that they're interdimensional. They're not extra-dimensional. Anyway, so when you're in the presence of these beings, you don't have your full faculties. It's sort of like you're in zombie land. So basically, as soon as my wife disappeared from me, the rational thing to do would be like, holy cow, what happened? My wife just disappeared. But no, immediately my head was turned to the corner of the living room, and I saw this floating plasma being. I call it a being because it controlled my mind. It was floating 4 feet off the ground, roughly 2 to 2.5 feet in width, about half a foot to a foot in height. It was rectangular in shape. It was pure plasma energy. It didn't have any external edges to it. Multicolored, semi-translucent. just waving like an energy in 4 feet off the ground. And then I did something again that's not rational. I waved my hand at it, and I said, bullshit. And then I turned around, I walked up the stairs, I went to my bed, put my hand on my chest, and then I was knocked out for about a half an hour.
Wow.
And then what happened was, and then about, again, I don't know the exact time, the best that we can come up with, anywhere from 15 minutes to half an hour, you know. So I woke up, and all of a sudden I had all my faculties, you know, like I was wide awake. I wasn't under any type of hypnotic control or anything. And all of a sudden I realized what the hell happened. I ran out of bed, I jumped out of bed, I ran down the stairs. And all of a sudden my wife was in the middle of the living room saying, you know, hallelujah, hallelujah, the angels killed her, the angels killed her. And she was dancing in the middle of the living room, and our dog was like, wasn't a 16-year-old dog with arthritis anymore, you know, that was barely able to walk. She was not only cured of the paralysis, she was cured of the arthritis that she had. Now she was like a teenager, just running around, jumping up all over the place. And my wife was like dancing in the middle of the living room, and in my head I was like, what the, you know, just happened. And then there was massive confusion, because I didn't realize until many, many months later of this concept called missing time, because it just wasn't in my vocabulary. For my wife, we both had gone down the stairs, and she immediately looked on the floor, and she saw that her dog was cured. She had no conception that she was gone for that 15 or 30 minutes, okay? She had no conception that I actually went back upstairs. She was just taken, and she don't know, you know, what happened. So when I was talking to her, you know, what the hell was happening, she described that object that she saw. Now, I never saw that object, because by the time she went upstairs to get me, that object was not there. What I saw after she had disappeared was this floating plasma object, a being, 4 feet off the ground, in the same exact location where she had seen that little craft. And it was total, you know, confusion, totally bedlam. But for me, not for my wife. For my wife, it was like the pure angels, you know, and that's it, no questions asked. You know, why are you asking so many questions? You're an atheist, you know, you don't believe in God. That's why you're asking so many questions, you know. So that was my first baptism to this experience, and that was just the first of many experiences for my wife and I, and then eventually for our daughter, who was 10 years old at the time, and now she's 13.
I have a question.
And,
Can I ask this quick question?
Yes, please.
Could I ask a quick question, Ray? Did your wife ever undergo hypnosis and recover the lost 15 minutes?
No, we never did. Neither of us. I personally don't see the need, and my wife firmly believes that they are angelic beings, just like I do now. Before I didn't, but I went through a whole series of progressions with these entities, and now I pretty much believe that these are angelic beings.
What makes you believe they're angelic rather than extraterrestrial, interdimensional, alien? And what does angelic beings mean to you?
Yeah, no, correct, yeah. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but to me, I had roughly 6 months later, I had no experiences for 6 months. Then 6 months later, I playfully called down a craft, and it was a huge, gigantic craft, the size of a stadium, sort of like a football stadium. It was huge, and that was witnessed by my daughter, who had just turned 10 years old, and 3 other adults. And so they also played consciousness control on me and the other people during that time period. I won't go into the details. But then that lasted for about 45 minutes. The craft was about 30 feet away from us. It was literally like 5 feet on top of our neighbor's roof. And it went up like 100 meters was the size of that craft. And it went back like 600 meters. It was literally almost right on top of the roof, the bottom of this craft. And it was semi-translucent. It was comprised of thousands and thousands of oblong streaks of light, which formed the whole shell of the craft, white colored, and inside plasma streaks moving around inside the craft. And then it also changed its light structures during this phenomenon, completely changed it to huge stars that were blinking on and off, like 2 or 3 times in a second. But anyway, immediately after that, either a day or 2 later, I was guided to a video on near-death experiences. And then I immediately ordered like 30 books on NDEs from Amazon. And then for the next 4 months, I literally spent 18 hours a day, nonstop, reading those books. That was my life. For 18 hours a day for 4 months straight. I had to finish that NDE book and read the next one. I didn't watch TV. I didn't go to the internet. I didn't have any social life with my family. Nothing whatsoever. 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, reading these NDE books. And then on these days, September 21st, 2012, December 22nd, 2012, and December 23rd, 2012, the very first 3 people I ever mentioned NDEs to, I hit the lottery with each 3 days in a row. My daughter's pediatrician, this who was a stranger to me, I never met before, because my wife always brought her there. This man at church, because we were at a church dinner, and I sat next to him. And then finally, my old man. Okay, the very first 3 people I ever asked about NDEs, and I hit the lottery with each one. Each one told me about their extensive NDEs. And then my father even had a life review. He said up there, time doesn't exist. He said he was up there 20 or 30 years. And so it was after that I realized that, that we are eternal spirits, that it wasn't a belief anymore. It was a knowing. And then later on, about 6 months later after that, I was basically taken out of my body and put into a matrix type of reality. And then an entity spoke to me while I was in the middle of a huge wheel spinning around. And it dealt with all the various contact modalities of how you can have, how you can pierce a veil and contact the other dimension and interact with a being. And while all these various paranormal components of contact were spinning all around me in a wheel, very slow spin. And then what I was told was that I need to inform humanity of the relationship between these beings, the spirit world, and consciousness. And so that's why I say that they are, that they are spiritual beings. And then some of the data we've gotten back from our study, experiential research study of over 2,500 individuals that took our surveys, it reconfirms my hypotheses. Because although I had a couple numbers, I'm not supposed to, but basically 70% of individuals that have had UFO-related ET contact have had out-of-body experiences. 70%, a huge number. Roughly 20% of experiencers that have had UFO-related contact experiences have also had a near-death experience. A huge number, almost 3 out of 10. And then when we asked the question in many, many different ways, whether they believe that the ETs are somehow related to the spirit world, the answer was 85%.
Why are you calling them angelic? I still ain't got it.
Angelic is my way that I perceive them as modern angels, because they can manipulate space and time. They know your past. They know your future. They intervene in your affairs. And they, I firmly believe, at least through my experiences through the NDE process, and what's personally happened to me, and what I got back from the research study, was that they're somehow tied to God source.
So what made you so obsessed with NDE near-death experiences, NDE experiences. Did you have one yourself or more?
No, I didn't have one. Well, I suspect, again, you can only hypothesize these things, you know. A lot of my experiences, even though I've seen crafts and you've seen entities in your living room, that sort of thing, but a lot of my experiences are things being put right in front of you. Synchronicity is not even a word. I'll give an example later on of how free was formed. It's just tons of these types of situations. So what, as I said before, I had no exposure to NDEs whatsoever. And then it was after I saw that huge craft, again for 45 minutes with these 5 witnesses, and it was almost right on top of us. You could spit at it if the spit would go straight instead of coming down. Then I went crazy for 4 months. That's all I did was to read NDE books. Don't ask me to explain that, but I think that these ETs guided me to do that. They forced me to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what made you go to NDE books rather than ET contact type books.
No. This was something that was guided. You just don't all of a sudden do not do any work. You know, you don't go out with your family. You don't watch TV. You don't go to the internet. You don't. I had tons of UFO books that I had been reading beforehand that I never even got to read. Okay, it was all of a sudden just NDE books. It was 18 hours a day. It was I would basically sleep, eat, and read NDE books. That's it. Oh. I would go to sleep in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning with an NDE book on my chest.
So did your wife think you went crazy?
Oh yeah, no. She told me many times during that time period that I'm not well, that I need to go to a psychiatrist, that they've got pills that can relax me, and that I need a formal evaluation, that I'm going crazy. And I just ignored her. I said, I know what I'm doing. I need to finish this book, you know. And after I finish this book, I need to read the next book. It was like total insanity. That's all I needed to do was read one more NDE book.
What did you learn from the NDE books? What stands out? You read like 20 of them?
Well, oh no, it was almost like 300 of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what stands out?
Oh no, yeah, you have to understand. It was like at least a book a day, you know, if not more. More like 2 books a day. That's what I did, you know, 2 to 3 books a day. I don't know exactly how many it was, depending on the size of the book. But some of those books were actually thin. You look at Raymond Moody's books; they're not very thick books, you know. And so, and I'm a very good reader, and I was reading them fairly quickly. But it wasn't so much the book; it was the experience. The 3 people, 3 days in a row. That's like hitting the lottery 3 days in a row. The very first 3 people you ever talked to about NDEs. The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. And again, what came out of my voice was like a robot voice, and that happened twice. It happened that Friday with the pediatrician, and it was like this. It was as, "Excuse me, doctor, I just finished reading approximately 300 books on near-death experiences. Out of those 300 books, approximately 50 were written by medical doctors such as yourself. And out of those 50 books, approximately 10 were written by professors in medical school. So it's a phenomenon that you need to be fully aware of. It's been scientifically valid, studied for many, many years now. It was like a robot that came out, and in my head, I thought I was going schizophrenic. Then I said, I'm really crazy now because this voice comes out of me, and I couldn't control him. And so that happened for 2 days. You could describe it as channeling. I don't know, you could describe it in many, many different ways, but it was like another voice came out. And then her eyeballs pop out, and then I said, "Excuse me, doctor, I didn't mean to offend you." And then she goes on and tells me her NDE, which is she describes the doctor, the nurse. She describes going through 2 walls and being right on top of her parents, and then in front of her office. And my daughter's right next to me. She's describing word for word the conversation that her parents had. She even described this lady with a blue shirt that had a little boy that was throwing the ball at the father. And she was 10 years old when she died. So she told her father, said, "Daddy, you shouldn't have yelled at that lady. Okay? That little boy was just playing. He didn't mean to throw the ball at you all that time. He was just trying to play. You need to apologize to her, And that was just the first day. The same thing happened with this man at church where he described his mother died in his arms a year ago. He had never told anyone about this because it was just a crazy story. And she described the paramedics. Okay, exactly. So there was a big, heavy black man, 6'3", 300 pounds, like a football player, followed by a short white woman with a blonde ponytail. She described exactly what he told her when he was crying on top of her while he was giving her CPR and breathing into and pounding her chest verbatim. You know, the whole works. And then the last one was my father, you know, who died when he had open heart surgery. He went out of his body, went to the tunnel, into the light, the whole works. So his father, so his mother, his brother, all previously deceased. And then they presented him to an entity that he perceived as God. And then he gave him a life review. And he said, up there, time doesn't exist. Why? Because I was up there 20 or 30 years. God was showing me all the good things I'd done in my life and all the bad things. So, you know, it was almost like having an NDE myself, you know, that 4-month period, and then followed by those 3 people 3 days in a row. So that's why I had this fascination with NDEs. And that's why we incorporated these NDE type of questions in our research study. Because I've spoken to a lot of experiencers that had NDEs. And all of a sudden, the green light lit, you know. I think you might have had one, Janet, right? Is that correct?
I have. Yeah, I'm one of the yes on the form.
Correct. And Janet, as I told you, we've had almost 3 out of 10 people, which is hundreds of people, experiencers have stated they've had a near-death experience, which is a huge number. That's just, you know, that's not a coincidence. There's a reason for that.
Amazing. So, I guess so. Let's see. It's about 5:32 for me. Let's continue a little bit more. If you want to tell us how you ended up founding Free, that might be good.
Okay. Yeah. Again, remember I told you that synchronicity is not even the appropriate word for it. I got to come up with some other word. Things are being put in place. Like I feel like I'm in a play, and I have the ability to ad-lib, but it's already been scripted because everything is being put in front of me, you know. And I just go with the flow. I ride the wave, you know. Let me explain. This is in May of 2013. So this was about 5 months later after these NDE type of experiences, 3 days in a row. I'm driving in the middle of a traffic jam going into downtown Miami in the morning. And then I'm literally taken out of my body, and I'm brought into I'm pure consciousness. I don't even see my body. I'm just pure consciousness. I'm floating in this emptiness. And all of a sudden, this wheel is all around me, a huge wheel. I'm in the center of it. And it had spokes, and each side of the spoke had a modality of contact. Like, for example, near-death experiences was in one spoke. Okay? The spirit world was in another spoke. Out-of-body experiences was in another spoke. Mystical meditation, remote viewing, you know, all shamanic journeys, you know, all the channeling, all these different ways that you could pierce the veil and communicate with non-human, you know, conscious being were inside this wheel and was spinning around slowly. And then inside my head came a download. It wasn't a voice. It was just instant information. And what it said was that I had to inform humanity of the relationship between these beings that I'm working with, the spirit world, that means their connection with pre-birth and post-death, and consciousness. And then when I saw that wheel spinning around with me, okay, what was holding all of that together, first of all, they're all interrelated, that they're not separate, that they're all one. And what's holding it all together is consciousness and quantum physics. Okay. And so at that point, it was like I freaked out. I called another experiencer. Some of you know who this individual is. And at 8:30 in the morning, and I was like, holy cow, you know, this is just what happened, you know. Have you ever heard about this? And this individual said, yes, you know, that they've heard about it. They've actually had something very similar to this. And so that afternoon when I got home, I got an email from Mary Rodwell. And the email went something like this. It said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry I'm responding to your email that you sent 7 months ago, but it just appeared on my screen." Okay. So then I responded back to her. I said, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is all the NDE stuff that I mentioned, because I had mentioned just what happened in our living room and the experiences that my wife had, which were numerous, up to that time, and then the huge craft that my daughter and I and those 3 other witnesses saw. So then I brought her up to date with all the crazy stuff that was happening to me, my family, and also the what happened today, that same day. So then we got on Skype and we started talking. And then I asked Mary, I said, Mary, do you go back, months to check your emails? Why did all of a sudden you're answering my email that was 7 months late? So she started laughing and she said, Ray, I barely can get through one day's email. How do you think I'm going to go back 7 months? I said, well, how do you explain this thing? And she started laughing. She said, Ray, by now, you ought to know what happened. These ETs just plopped it on the screen, And so, even though I've had all these crazy experiences, my restless mind feel like, there's got to be an explanation for this, So anyway, the next day at 9:30 in the morning, Dr. Rudy Shields, who is a 75-year-old emeritus professor from Harvard of astrophysics, gives me a call. I didn't even know who this guy was. Okay, and all of a sudden he starts talking to me, and I didn't know who this guy was. Who are you? Oh, I'm Dr. Rudy Shields, emeritus professor of astrophysics at Harvard, and I'm a dear friend of Mary. And Mary sent me an email about you. And I was like, holy cow, So then he started telling me that the download that I got was 100% correct. That all of these different modalities of contact, so-called paranormal modalities of contact, are all interrelated, and that advanced physics and consciousness can begin to explain how they're all interrelated. Okay? And then at the end of it all, after like 90 minutes of him, spoon-feeding me quantum physics and consciousness and all of that, he said, well, you need to listen to these ETs, because they gave you a message, instructions. And I said, well, I have no idea what the hell we're going to do, And so he said, it'll come to you. And then he says, I will be your scientific advisor once you do find out what you want to do, okay? I'll be here to support you. So he said, write down this telephone number. And I wrote down the telephone number. He says, that's the telephone number of my mentor. And I was like, well, who's your mentor? And he said, well, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Okay? And I was like, whoa, And so later on in the afternoon, I called Edgar up, and he invited me to his house the next day. So by the 3rd day, I was in Edgar Mitchell's house. I spent there like 6 days, about 6 hours that day. And at the end of it, he told me the same thing that Rudy told me. He says, look, Ray, I spoke with Rudy about what happened to you, and you need to listen to your ETs. Okay? I'm here to help you. Edgar, I have no idea. It'll come to you. Once you come to you, I'm going to, support you. And we even have a separate physics group that I coordinate. It's called Quantrack. And we're studying the physics of consciousness and zero-point energy, and also energy healing, the physics of energy healing. And he says, and we can support your work, So what happened was that same night, then, I got a call, I called Mary. And I said, Mary, I said, look, we need to form an organization. I don't know what the hell we're going to be doing. But Rudy and Edgar are going to be backing us up. And that's when FREE was formed. Mary basically 2 weeks later sent me an email, said, hey, I got the name, the perfect name, FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And so you can't make this stuff up. George Knapp on Coast to Coast interviewed Mary after I was interviewed, and he asked Mary, I said, Mary, Ray told me this story. I don't know whether to believe him or not. Is it true that that same day that he got that download, you got this email that was 7 months late? And she said, yes, very, very true. And then Rudy, was interviewed later on, and so the same thing. It's you can't make these stories up. It's just too crazy.
I know, and I've had things like that happen in life.
Yeah.
Dr. Lessin, you want to have a question? Let's just hear from Karen for a few minutes, and then we'll go back to you, Ray. Karen, are you there? Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that the synchronicity factor has been very true in the founding of this organization. I happened to hear about it through Alfred Weber. He mentioned it on his Facebook page. I went and I got a hold of Ray and found out they needed some help. So I've been the admin of a number of Facebook groups, and so I offered to get the ball rolling. And we're over 2,000 members on the Facebook group. But I want to quickly tell my experiences story, because this is about experiences, and just hit the highlights. In 1979, when Skylab was in the decaying orbit, I thought I saw Skylab myself with a relative of mine. So we actually saw a star tetrahedron-shaped craft in Salem, Oregon in 1979. And I went crazy for UFOs for a while. And then I went to college and got busy on my life and got married and had kids, and all kinds of things happened where it just seemed like the UFO thing was kind of unsatisfactory, since, you know, when you follow the literature, I mean, you talk about it, but they never prove anything, so there's a constant debate. So I kind of got turned off and busy with life, and then all my kids, I had an empty nest, and they were all moving on to their things, and that's when I decided to revisit the topic myself. And then I had a series of life events. One of them was kind of an awakening episode in my life, and shortly thereafter, in 2009, I started doing automatic writing. I was already a journaler, and something just kind of took over my journaling. And I've got quite a few, you know, little notebooks full of this download of all of this information that made absolutely no sense to me. But by then, I had made contact with a couple of Native American spirit guides, as well as this one spirit group called the Joyous, and they dictated to me a whole bunch of things about humanity entering Paradigm Galactic, and that's when we become aware as humanity of our neighbors, you know, our neighbors in our neighborhood here in the solar system and in the galaxy. And I've been now using that information. One huge thing that they wanted to talk about is how we go from a hierarchic-based pyramidic system of governance to a holarchic system of governance, which is will be much more egalitarian and all that. But I want to, since Dr. Sasha Lessin mentioned the link, I wanted to tell you about, I was in the latter-day internet group with A.R. Borden, and I never was part of the actual The Link, but I was one of Dr. Borden's dreams was to do something called the Linkage Institute, and he passed away in 2013, so everything was kind of on hold. And then just you guys, Dana and Sasha, you took on our group to get the information out on Aquarian Radio. And so the ball is rolling for those of us who were the latter-day students of Dr. Borden to share what we know, and we've done that, and it's been wonderful. And it was Michael Lee Hill's idea to go forward and try to create this idea, the Linkage Institute, where we all study some advanced communication and energy and other things that were given to us by our ancestors, Anunnaki, and other beings. And so we're kind of stepping, you know, not real quick. We don't exactly know where to go, but we feel very guided. So that's kind of my sort of ET experiences. I'm a multiple contactee, so since I started the automatic writing, I achieved telepathic contact with another several races and individuals and beings. That got to be almost too much. I had to tell them to back off because there was too many. So I kind of stuck with about 7 that I would talk to, and I can tell which, you know, depending on what they're telling me, which one's kind of talking to me. But as a result, I've been being trained into what is humanity going through. We are going through a transition. Obviously, as far as like the world economic system, that a snake has been eating its tail and it's run out of tail, and energetically, humanity is growing up. It's like all of humanity is a fractal of one human. And humans grow up. We grow up, we're children, then we're adolescent, then we're young adults, and on. Well, that's the same thing of our race. Is our human race is now in its adolescent phase, obviously because we really value very adolescent things, you know, sports, cars, money, stuff like that. and we're becoming very self-conscious and self-aware. And I believe humanity is growing up just like a person. And we're now asking, where do we come from? Who are our parents? Where are we going? What is our destiny? What do we want out of life? And so that's kind of the spirit that I, work with, and also where I came in to work with the free organization. I think it's wonderful. We are being assisted. We're also being resisted. So we're going through, growing and figuring out different efforts to move the ball forward, as it were, where maybe some other ones haven't. And I think, just to close my comments, we've had these three waves. We had ufology, exopolitics, and the experiencer movement. Ufology was helping us to come to grips with the craft, and maybe there's something up there, and, the government involvement. Exopolitics was helping us speculate on who our neighbors are, and the experiencer movement is, I believe, following the protocol of our visitors. They're contacting people peer to peer. And as a result, that's a personal experience that people are, have in their personal lives, so many people, that they haven't said anything. And so the next wave really will be the experience when we begin to have those conversations about what we've experienced personally. And that's a very powerful way for them to connect with us. And so I say we follow the protocol of our visitors and open the dialogue, stop making fun of us, no more ridicule. We're one of the groups that still have to stay under the radar when so many other, groups have come out, minority groups have come out. It's time for experiences to come out or not. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to if they're not ready. But a lot of us are more than ready, and we're joining together to do Experiencer Liberation Day.
Wow. Dr. Lessin.
Karen, to concretize this for a regular earthling like me, if you could just give us a picture with what you saw, what you heard, what fragrances you experienced, what your emotional state was in some of these ET contacts that you've had. Can you give us a feeling so we can feel what it's like to be there with you, what your phenomenological experience was?
Oh, great. I've got a good one. One being that I came in contact with was an insectoid type being. It was very interesting because, first of all, we find when you make a contact that there's something that you have in common with that being. And in my case, I really felt like it was my job to do a good job being a parent, raising my kids. And, one of the problems we have in planet Earth is that the situation with children over the world, with neglect and poverty and all of that. And this particular being contacted me based on the fact that they very much have a different feeling about their children. They're very precious to their race. And basically they are a sexual reproduction situation, so they're both a he and a she. And they lay eggs in a cave in water, and then those are tended very carefully by tenders, and then they hatch up, and then they go together through life together as a family. And this being, part of what made it interesting is that I could see this being's planet through my mind's eye, and this being could see my planet through my mind's eye. And the thing that was the most interesting was at the time I was living on a boat. So I was on surface water. Their planet doesn't have surface water. It's too warm. So the water kind of turns to steam. And so this being enjoyed looking at my strange planet with the surface water, and I enjoyed, through its mind's eye, to see this steamy kind of dark kind of cave place. But the feeling I got from this being was so positive. I mean, probably if we saw this being in real life, we'd probably freak out because it's kind of dark black and kind of like sort of grasshopper looking. But the emotional feeling was so positive, and it was a good interchange, just like, two ambassadors sharing their planet information with each other. And I just got to see different aspects of their society, and they are interested in humanity. A lot of beings are very interested in Earth and interested in humanity, how it's, It's the True Man Show, right? Everybody's watching the True Man Show to see how humanity is going to come through this next phase, this transition. So that creates a lot of interest. I know other people have mentioned that as well.
The Truman Show, the True Man Show.
True Manta.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. We're saying Truman, like Truman Show, but the True Man Show. Is that what you were saying?
No, the True
Yes, I was. I was making a pun.
Making a pun. It wasn't true. I just want to clarify that because I didn't want it going over anybody's head. I'd like to go back to Ray for the next 6 minutes, and then Ray, while you're talking, the break music might come on, so just be aware of that, and we'll just continue after the break. So both of you have been working with a lot of experiencers, reading their documents, their what do you call it, surveys. Ray, you've been out a lot since I last saw you at the International UFO Congress in February. Can you tell us a little bit about your findings as you're out in the world and what you're allowed to reveal this time?
Okay. Yeah. Our survey, just want to give a little background to it. This is an academic research study. We have 5 retired professors. All of them have been working with experiencers. Well, almost all of them, except for one, for close to 30 years. We also have 4 individuals that are not academics. And what they do is they balance out to give the non-academic perspective, to give the boots-on-the-ground perspective. These are the people that have been working pretty much on a daily basis with experiencers. We have Mary Rodwell, which most of your audience knows. We have Kathleen Martin, who, again, most of your audience should know. She wrote the book on Benny and Barney Hill, and Betty Hill was her aunt, and actually lived with her for many years. And she's also the director of MUFON's, it used to be Alien Abduction Research Team. Now it's Experiencer Research Team. And then we have Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who's written 62 books on various topics associated with the paranormal and the spirit world, for lack of a better word. So she brings this very broad, perspective, not just from the ET perspective of it, from the whole paranormal aspects of it. Her most famous book, I guess, is a book that she wrote several years ago titled The Jinn. And then we have Giorgio Piacenza from Peru, who is himself as an experiencer and is one of the leading researchers on experiencers and ufology and on consciousness. He's just a very smart man. He's also a physicist, an amateur physicist, but knows physics extremely well. And then the scientists are Dr. Rudy Shields, who I mentioned before. Dr. Edgar Mitchell has a PhD from MIT, and has written various scientific articles on the physics of consciousness. We also have Dr. John Climo, who's one of the world's leading parapsychologists, and his most famous book is a book titled Channeling. He was a professor for over 40 years. And then we have Dr. Bob Davis, who is a neuroscientist. So that's the last person you would think that's doing this type of work, a retired, tenured professor of the brain. But several years ago, he and his wife were out in the desert of Sedona, Arizona, and both of them saw a UFO. And so that was his version of the 2x4 over his head to wake him up to this new reality. And then we have another individual, Dr. Michael Melton, who's a clinical psychologist, and he's on a leave of absence from FLEE because of personal family matters. So that's pretty much his board of directors. Rudy is the chair of it, executive director of FLEE. There's the professor from Harvard, retired professor from Harvard of astrophysics. Now, maybe I'll give a little background before we go into the break, Janet, of how the research study got even thought of. And then maybe when we return, I can give a little bit more of the details of it.
Excellent.
Good idea.
Yes, sounds like a good strategy.
Okay. So Sasha can certainly understand my perspective. Here I was, I have been teaching for 6 years as an adjunct professor because I was an ADD, and you cannot get a tenure track position if you don't have a PhD. But pretty much I was writing my dissertation when I had to quit when my ex-wife got a brain aneurysm, and I could not continue writing my dissertation. But basically, my mind was as an academic. Teaching for 6 years as an adjunct in the evenings while I worked full time. So when these experiences happen to me, the first thing you do, because you have no background, is you go to the internet. You type in UFOs, you type in ETs, you type in aliens, you type in the paranormal. And, the vast majority that I got was just, hogwash, for lack of a better word. It was contradictory information. There were gods, there were devils, there were Anunnakis, there were Nephilims, there were this, there were that. And it was like everyone had like a different, approach to this. And I just couldn't get my hands around it. I was like, what the hell is going on? So then I started to research books on experiencers. And what I found out was that there were literally, thousands of books that were written by experiencers. Yes.
That's our break. Let's book
okay.
Right there, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Solution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Hernendez-Karen Lessin, my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and my special guests, Ray Hernendez and Karen Patrick. But before we get back to the show, I want to remind everybody that Revolution Radio is listener supported. So please do go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and donate what you can. $5, $15, $20, whatever you donate is greatly appreciated. And we do thank you very much because your donations allow us to continue broadcasting and bring you shows like ours and all the other special host shows and everything on Studio A and B. So thank you very, very much. Before we bring back Ray and Karen, what would you like to say, Dr. Lessin?
We are now, to just put you in context, we're looking at the survey of experiencers, how the survey was set up, and then what it found out so far that Ray is able to share with us.
Right. I know you're going to do a formal announcement later on, sometime later this year, I imagine. I'm not sure the time frame. But we are very curious about what you can tell us, what you have learned so far. You and I met in February, and I know that you've had lots of adventures and radio shows and discussions, the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So please continue what you're saying before the break. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Janet and Sasha. Hopefully Karen can talk a little bit about the experiencer support side, because free is not just about research, but also support. Over the last year and a half, we have assisted over 300 individuals in a program that used to be titled Experiencer Buddy, and now we're calling peer-to-peer support program. And that's basically hooking experiencers up with someone to talk to. So hopefully Karen can talk a little bit about that, and me as well. But let me go over the research aspect of it. So here I was trying to get a grasp of what's going on with me, and I had pretty much almost no one to talk to, period. And so then I said, well, let me do an academic literature review. See what has been published academically about people that have had UFO-related ET contact. And what I found out was that there was almost no statistical studies on this, and most of the publications were really of a non-academic quality. It was basically compilations of individual stories. Like, for example, Dr. Mack's book, Passport to the Cosmos, is an excellent book. I think one of the best books that's out there on this phenomenon. But again, he only interviewed a limited amount of individuals for that. And it was a qualitative review of a small sampling of individuals. The few statistical studies focused primarily on abductions. And when I took a look at those studies, they had very, very small samples, mainly 50 individuals. Some of them went up to 100 individuals, but mainly in the 50 range. And also the questions. The questions were about 50 questions. And then they were very, very limited in the topic areas that they focused on. And again, it was purely abductions, not, the overall range of individuals that have had ET contact. Now, one of the discoveries that we found in our study, because our focus is not on abductions, our focus is on all types of contact, UFO-related contact experiences. People have been abducted and people have not been abducted. Like in my case, I was never abducted. And numerous other people I've spoken with have had ET contact, but no perception of ever been abducted. So one of the hypotheses that we had is that, okay, we're not going to focus on abductees. We're going to focus on everybody. And our hypotheses turned out to be correct because approximately 70% of individuals that have had ET contact experiences as a result of UFO ET contact experiences have not had an abduction. So only about 3 out of 10 have what they perceive to be an abduction. So that's one finding that was not surprising to many people in our group, but which is surprising to many other people in this field, especially internet and radio hosts, etc. And in terms of our study, we have 2 surveys that are running in English, Spanish, and in French. The second survey is much, much more comprehensive. The 2 surveys together are 600 questions. In these 3 languages, we have had over 2,500 individuals that have responded to these surveys. So it's a huge, huge sample group. Then the next phase that we're doing is for the people that completed both phase 1 and phase 2, we're asking them to submit written responses to open-ended questions. And we're going to be meeting on November 3rd to finalize that instrument. And then the last step is formal one-on-one interviews. Now, again, our whole research is all anonymous. We don't use any personal information on the individual. The participant will just have a number. Even the person that's going to be doing the interview will be known by a number. The interviews will be recorded, and there's no personal information that will be asked. And if you do tell us that information beforehand, we'll tell you not to tell us your real name, your address, telephone number, date of birth, any of that, even where you live. None of that information. So it's completely and totally anonymous. Very important that we protect the anonymity of the participant. These are just some of the few characteristics that distinguish our research from all the previous abduction studies. I think even more important than all of that is the way we publicize these things. Most of the previous research on abductees were people that went to MUFON or to CUFOS, which is the organization before MUFON, and then they stated that they reported and had an abduction. So then these people would be approached and say, could you fill a survey for us? So it's very, very limited, in terms of outreach to people in this area. Our approach was that we posted it on a monthly basis to various Facebook sites, over 500 Facebook sites. And it wasn't just, ufology or abduction. It was to everybody and his mother. It was to exopolitics. It was to New Age. It was to cryptozoology. It was to consciousness studies. Aliens, ETs, hybrids, you name it. Anything that any organization out there that could possibly have experiencers reading this, we send it out. Okay, so it's again abduction and non-abduction related. Anyone that's had UFO-related ET contact. Then we sent it out to all the MUFON organizations, all the researchers, all the writers, all the authors that have ever published a book, all experiencers that have ever published a book on UFO-related ET contact or abductions. It was close to 5,000 names, emails that we sent it out to websites. So it was a huge, massive mailing list informing of the research study and the link for the survey. So it was a huge, gigantic net that was cast out to get people aware of what we're doing. And then we went on radio shows for over a year, talking to people about our study and getting people to take our surveys. And the result is that we've gotten, in English, more than 1,900 individuals that have taken our Phase 1 survey, and in Spanish, over 400 names for our Phase 1 survey. For English, for Phase 2, we have close to 1,200 individuals that have taken Phase 2. So it's a huge number, and it's a huge sample pool. So now we can actually, make some declarations of what actually might be going on. Before, we were totally clueless because there was a lot of anecdotal information from lots of independent authors publishing their experiences. And then the few statistical studies were tiny sample groups. But now we have huge sample groups. Now, as a background, our research committee met recently, our board of directors met, and we were going to release our preliminary data September 1st. And then they decided to keep the surveys open because we're going to be launching the Phase 2 in Spanish this week. And so they wanted, for those people that did Phase 1 in Spanish, to have an opportunity to complete Phase 2 without being biased, without being, tainted from releasing the Phase 1 and Phase 2 in English. So we will be, as of December 1st, revealing a good majority of our data as of after December 1st, which is the date that we have our next board of directors meeting. But I can give out a little sprinkling of information of things that really have perked our interest. That would be very, very surprising to the audiences out there.
Yes.
I told you a little bit of, yes. One is the percentage of people that see these experiences as positive. Okay. Can I give you the number? But it will surprise many, many, many people. Okay. At the number that see it as positive and the number that see it as negative. The other is the type of entity. Okay. Most people think that it's the small grays that are out there doing most of this concept. You'll find out December 1st. Human-looking ETs are super, super high the percent. And in Latin America, by far, they are the largest percent of the entities that are being seen and interacting with experiencers. Then also, for all these types of beings, how people perceive certain beings. Whether they're good, positive, negative, how they treated you. We ask that question many, many different ways. We ask that question of how they perceive these entities. And the responses are just shocking of what people are stating. Also, transformational issues. That's another shocking issue. It was a huge percent that described total transformation of the experiencers. Now, this is not anything that we didn't know before. But you look at my case. Here's a person that was a total atheist. Okay, now I have more belief in that we are eternal spirits than a Catholic priest in Miami. Okay, in terms of material things, I never really was interested in material things before, but now it's even less. Okay, it's almost zero. In terms of ecology, I did work in that field, in the environmental field, for many, many, many years. But now it's even more strengthened. The belief in your fellow human being, taking care of them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What is happening is a total transformation of the experiencer after you have these experiences. Now, the people in this field, and obviously, all four of us here in this conversation know that information, but that's not something that's stressed by actually raw data. When you look at, 85% of experiencers state this, 85% state that, 90% state this, So it's again, I apologize for the audience for not being able to reveal actual data. I released a few of them before, in terms of the NDEs and out-of-body experiences, that sort of thing. But there are literally tons of these findings that are quite shocking, and it's not what is the standard viewpoint out in the internet and on radio shows.
Fascinating. I have a couple questions, and then maybe Dr. Lessin has something, and then we can pass the ball to Karen. Let's see.
Yeah.
Now, weeks ago, we interviewed Dr. Leo Sprinkle, and he actually did surveys back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And
he's a member of our board of directors since day one.
Have you incorporated his research from the 50s and 60s experiencers? And if
yes.
you had a chance, I wonder what the difference is between the early contact experiences and the modern era.
Well, there's several differences in there. Leo, as I said before, is a member of our board of directors, a member of our research committee, and we did incorporate many of his questions that he used in our research study. Again, most of his studies, they used people that were self-stated abductees. All the studies back then that did not focus on non-abductees. It was only abductees. Now, Leo's most famous work was a study that he did, I believe, in 1987, which is the personality characteristics of abductees. And they applied, Sasha could probably chime in here, it was an assessment, a mental health assessment called the Minnesota MMH study. I forgot the acronyms of it. But it's a mental health battery.
MMPI.
That's the one. Correct. And then there's different levels and degrees and how extent you want to apply that. Now, for us, it was quite cumbersome to apply that to what we're doing because of the cost involved, the logistics involved, etc. I won't go into those details for now. But basically, what Leo came up with was that these individuals are just as normal as you and I. That there were no mental health abnormalities of these individuals. And Leo's study confirmed some of the other previous studies that had been done by other psychologists and psychiatrists, and then subsequent studies, because I would say maybe half of the studies that were done on abductees at that time was whether they were crazy or not. Okay, these were done by psychologists and psychiatrists. And all of the studies demonstrated that, they're just normal people like you and I. And so Leo's was very important because he had a large sample pool. I think he had 165 individuals that were self-claimed abductees. And so that was the largest sample pool. But again, it was focused on the topic area, whether they had, I don't know the appropriate term, Sasha could jump in here, but whether they had mental health abnormalities, for lack of a better word, as per that test. And so we did include some of those questions in there that he used that were outside of the mental health assessments. Another thing is we debated whether to have what is called the fantasy proneness test, because that had been utilized by a lot of these previous studies. Okay, now I myself took that test and I failed, because if you answered yes to these questions, that means you suffer from fantasy proneness. And let me go over some of this. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience? Fantasy proneness. Okay. Have you ever had telepathic communications? Fantasy proneness. Et cetera, et cetera. So the problem with these tests is that these are tests that were devised by non-experiencers in the psychiatric and psychological fields. Okay. They have no idea what goes on with individuals having anomalous contact experiences, and they get labeled, fantasy proneness, like they're inventing this stuff. So at this point, we didn't want to do the whole mental health route because numerous studies have demonstrated that experiencers are not nuts, that we don't suffer from mental instabilities. And why another test when it's been demonstrated through numerous previous studies? And then we didn't want to apply the fantasy promise test because, it's a bullshit study because it's non-experiencers that made these studies up. For example, out-of-body experiences. You would rule out 70% of the people that took our test because 70% had out-of-body experiences. So like in my case too, so anyone that's ever had that, that's it, fantasy promise. So these are just some of the many issues that were debated internally in our group in terms of the methodology of how we were proceeding with our study. And again, this is a study that's been worked between professors, academic professors that work with research methodology, and people like Mary and Kathleen Martin and Rosemary Avangeli in Georgia, who are non-academics, but people have been working with experiences for 30 years. So it's a blending of the best of what their strengths were.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to just make a little aside. Dr. Sprinkle, because of his interest, and especially because he showed that experiencers tend to be at least as sane, perhaps more sane than the general population, was actually denied tenure in psychology because he insisted on studying these ET and other kind of experiences and reporting on it, and they were trying to shush it up. So he despite all this, he kept doing it and doing it better and better. And so we're really lucky to have Dr. Leo contributing. But his case does highlight the problems that Karen has alluded to, that those who have done experiences or those who have tried to put it in a intelligent or a research context get sanctioned. And so Free has broken free and is actually doing the research that the academics are so afraid of because it shatters their clinging to the materialist paradigm that keeps us enslaved, in my humble opinion. I would like to ask you a question about a very specific kind of experience that I find really useful, and that is the people that have prophetic experiences. And I said at the beginning of the show that we have 3 experiencers, and one of the most interesting to me experiencers that I know of has actually been conditioned since childhood to report on humanity and help steer humanity by a series of prophetic visions, and is regarded as the key by many of the Anunnaki to understanding the problems of this planet, particularly in its suppression of the feminine. And this experiencer is named Janet Lessin, and she'll tell you about her experience now.
Well, I wanted to first get the answer to your question. Are you getting other experiences that are having prophetic type messages that have a tendency to maybe come true, or some that are yet to come? What's happened to me is that I find myself in front of I don't want to call it a committee. It's more like a United Nations gathering of extraterrestrials, and there are over 100,000 individual distinct beings at some of these meetings. I have smaller meetings I've been to, but some of the larger ones, there were just so many, there was over 100,000 beings there. Are you finding other experiencers having these type of prophetic visions and or being called into some kind of group meetings with extraterrestrials, like council meetings? Go ahead.
We did ask that question, Janet. Those 2 questions. We asked the questions about there's a specific paranormal term which I just now forgot, about being able to predict the future. Anyway, I forgot the appropriate term that we have in our survey, but it's basically foretelling the future. We do ask that question, and it was a high number of people that are having these types of experiences. We also asked the question of whether they were ever taken to a galactic council, which is a meeting of different types of ETs. And again, it was a big number that answered that question, Again, these are just, questions that have never been fully asked in a statistical format before. It's things that we knew that a lot of experiencers have had, and that we knew stories. This person told the story. This other person told the story. You're putting all the pieces together, but you never know exactly what percent of people or how large is this are these experiences. But from our data, you're seeing that, yes, these experiences are very, very real. And it's not just a few people. There's, tons of people that are having these types of experiences.
What's the content of the of their predictions for us Earthlings?
Well, but
many different categories.
Well, the details are going to come once we do the open-ended questions and in the interviews. Because right now we just ask generic questions. And then the fine-tuning comes, in these next two instruments. But a lot of people have gotten information about ecological catastrophes.
Ah.
A lot of individuals have gotten information about nuclear war, destructions of part of humanity. And that we're heading down that path unless humanity changes, and that we still have the ability to change. Now, those types of things are things that we've heard just by talking to experiencers one-on-one and hearing tons of their stories, and with the data confirming that they're having these types of information told them. Now, in terms of what specifically was told to them or opinions that they feel, that type of information will come through the open-ended questions and through the formal interviews. So we're still pretty much at the basics of our research study because it's a multi-tiered approach.
Right. I have one question, and then I want to pass the ball back to Karen. I can feel her kind of going, ooh, ooh, and thank you for your patience, Karen. I really do appreciate that. Earlier you were talking about the anonymity, but is there room for those who want to fully come out of the closet and go by name?
Yes, there is that ability. I did that myself. Like everyone knows, I fully state my name. I'm a IRS tax attorney with the IRS in Miami, that sort of thing. And there's many people that did, a significant number did do that. Which to me is like a breath of fresh air, because that's one of the things we're trying to do with the Experiential Liberation Day, is that we have so many people that are in the closet. And let me just tell, maybe there's a good segue to Karen and that movement. I was watching TV, goodness, this is maybe a year ago, Karen? Was it a year ago? About a year ago. My daughter was watching a program on cable. We had just put that cable back on. We had it off for years, okay? And all of a sudden I hear these two gay men talking about their gay relationship. And my daughter had just turned, 12 years old or something like that a year ago. And I'm like, what? Next thing they'll be doing is, very explicit sexual stuff, And I went up there and I said, what the hell are you listening to? And she said, Daddy, it's a Fox program. It's the #1 rated show on TV, right? And then when I saw it, it was true. It was they had that guy that was Al Bundy in that show that was on TV for many, many years. They had this woman, this Colombian woman who does comedy, and so it's the #1 show on TV, but yet they have these two gay men that were the lead, right? And so to myself, I said to myself, my God, how far has the gay and lesbian liberation movement come? Where they're now open and talking about their gay relationship in the #1 TV show in the country. There are a lot of these awards, Academy Awards, etc. You have these, gay men and females that are the hosts of these shows. And here I am, Ray Hernendez. I still have to hide in the closet, because I'm an experiencer. And so boom, they hit me in the head, like a 2x4. I said, man, what we need is a liberation movement for experiencers, just like a liberation movement that worked with the gay and lesbian liberation movement and the civil rights movement. We need to come out of the closet. We need to be able to talk about experiences openly and not to keep quiet, you know. And so that's how that idea came about. And so then I mentioned it to some of the folks at Starborn Support, and they loved the idea, and they signed off on it. And then Karen loved the idea, and before you know it, there's like, you know, most of the networks throughout the U.S., organizations and individuals that are working with experiencers love the idea. So then the next step is that we're trying to get together instead of like working individually in our work. Is that why don't we get together, have a series of meetings over, you know, who knows how long, and push together national initiatives that can be done to express the idea that let's get organized. Let's do this nationally. Let's do this in sync instead of separately. And so that's where this idea of an experiential liberation movement comes in. And then maybe Karen can talk about some of the ideas that we've been talking about. And I pass the baton to Karen.
And I have one question to Karen as the baton comes your way. How did you and Ray meet?
Oh, goodness. Well, I poke around I'm an admin for several related groups to disclosure and anomalies and whatnot. And it was literally through Alfred Lavermont Weber, who said, hey, there's this Ray guy and he needs some help. And Alfred, of course, is exopolitics.com guy, and he's amazing, and I appreciate his work so much. And he basically said that this organization was being started, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and this guy named Ray, and I got on the phone with Ray, and since I have started several Facebook groups, I felt I could throw my shoulder into helping Free Get It Facebook group off the ground, and we have almost 2,500 members now in our group. I'm very excited about that, and I want to get some real particulars in here right now. One is that if you want to know our Facebook group, it's facebook.com/groups/capital S, capital R, capital EE, free dot. Capital E Experiencers, and come find us, come join us. It's an interesting group. If you don't want to join us, you can read the messages without joining. I tell people that if they're way deep in the closet, I don't want them to sign up and join with us if it will upset their personal apple cart. But I'm very excited about the Experiencer Liberation Day. I've been sort of out of the closet. I came out on radio in 2012, and it's been interesting. I've now come to a personal ability that it's not going to affect me financially, which is really nice. But, you know, everyone's in their own place, and you do not have to come out on that day, but maybe you can explore your feelings about it. Another asset that we have, if you want to find the actual event page on Facebook, we have a hashtag for that, and it's $, EX for experiences, LIB for liberation, and DAY. So hashtag EXLIBDAY, and that's our page, and you can come and join that. Now, I've also, Janet, you had a wonderful asset called truthevents.org, and I started helping you fill out all these different events and conferences that, if you go to truthevents.org, that will have probably the lengthiest description of what you can do on Experiencers Liberation Day. And I had a kind of a call to action kind of thing. First of all, I also want to mention we have a web page, and I have to ask Ray, is the survey closed now? So if somebody went to our web page, can they participate in the survey, or are we closed at this point?
Yeah, it's still open, Karen. It'll be open until November the 30th.
Okay, so www.experiencer.org gets you to that page, and you get in there and participate in the survey. It's a historical, well, it's pretty detailed. I know it took a while for me, and I enjoyed the questions because I really learned a lot about myself. But one other thing, couple other things I want to say, just one other thing is that we've had Ray talked about our wonderful board and who's gotten us going. I want to talk about our community people because they're kind of unsung heroes of this thing. And
please. Let's go through them, yeah.
Yeah, well, we've had some of them on AquarianRadio.com, the interviews, so these names might be familiar. We have Lynn Hartram and Kirsten Corvus-Sophia, who are helping with our...
Karen, did you break it up?
Oh,
you broke up, Karen?
She may have gone... Oh, there she is. Okay. We missed the last sentence or two. You said you were starting to name names.
Lynn Hartram and Kirsten Corvus-Sophia are part of our peer support program. That is a program where you can tell somebody, if you recently had an experience, to have someone to kind of debrief with. Charlotte Rose Wan is helping with Experience Liberation Day. Reverend John Koch has been on. He's a regular on our Friday Aquarian Radio channels, and he's helping with a therapist list. We're trying to find therapists who can do regression therapy with experiencers. That's in the works, and he also works with our Twitter account. And Ben McGuire is doing our website, as aforementioned, the website, and all of us together work on the Free Experiencers Facebook group. We got a A-team, man. We have A-team on the research side and A-team on the experiencer community side, and we're looking for volunteers for anybody who wants to help. It's a big job, and we definitely could use some help, but I just wanted to tell those assets and just to say that we're just getting started with this Experience and Liberation Day. It's kind of a new thing. And boy, by next year, we're going to be gangbusters with it. And why I think it's important is I believe this. We have the wonderful effort by Steve Bassett and others for disclosure, to get the president to stand up and say, hey, it's real. That'd be great. However, it hasn't happened in the entire time that, since Roswell, basically. And what I came to realize is we are disclosure. We experiencers. When we share our stories, I've done it many times. I can get people telling me, well, I saw a UFO back when I was camping. I get those stories because I share my story. And it becomes a human experience. This is not a paranormal or weird experience. This is a human experience in the range of other human experiences. And I know, studying this from my Native American heritage, that my Native American Cherokee ancestors were talking about the star beings way back in the day. So this has been going on a while, and it's going to continue. And, it's time. I am hearing from whistleblowers like you would not believe, saying it's time to get this out. It's time to get what's going on in NASA out. It's time to get, all of the disclosure that's going around the world, that other countries are bringing their files forward of UFO, especially in Latin America, of what has been going on for a long time. And I believe we're in soft disclosure, which is, watching Ancient Aliens and Hangar One, all those programs, that's preparing the way for us to know more about this. So it's time to not let people laugh at you. I just don't. If someone wants to talk about tinfoil hats and anal probes, I go, no, wait a second here. Either the UFOs are ours, like they're military, something or other, or theirs. Either way, there's some really interesting things to know. And it's time to stand up for ourselves and not let ourselves be ridiculed like that. I'm very excited about the results of the survey to find out how many people view their experience as positive, because in the media, it's almost skewed negative. So let
me throw it out there now. We asked that question many different ways. Okay, it was about five or six different ways. So depending on how you asked it, you got slightly different numbers, but pretty much universally, 70% said it was positive.
Okay, good. That's good.
And then there was another 20%, 15 to 20%, that said it was either neutral or positive and neutral. And then there was a small group, about 10%, that said it was negative. And again, we asked it many different ways. We asked it like the last question. Maybe we ought to go to that last question, because that would be very helpful for the group here. Do you mind that, Karen, to throw out that last question?
Yes, and I would like to say that I would say that at a certain point in my experience, I considered it a negative situation because my belief systems were not ready to handle the truth.
Yeah,
and also it was personally uncomfortable because I'm having these weird experiences and no one to talk to. Over time, I processed it, and it became a very positive experience. So
yes.
I think,
yeah.
Depending on who
we asked that question, the first experience, and then we asked the last experience. For example, this is how we raised that issue that you just raised. This is, how would you characterize your first few initial extraterrestrial encounter experiences? What were your initial beliefs of your experiences? And then the follow-up question is, how would you characterize your last few extraterrestrial encounter experiences? What are your beliefs now about your experiences? So let me go over their beliefs now, okay? Because we're not a little bit at liberty, okay? And again, it's all different how people asked it, this question. For example, we had a question whether they believed that the ETs were evil or bad. Let me see if I can find that number. Goodness, it was like maybe the exact number, but it was like 85% said that no, ETs are not good or bad, or not evil. Now, when then you ask them, whether they're good, whether they're malevolent, then it was like maybe like 55%. But that was because a lot of people, do not see them as purely good. It might have been benign. Okay. But let me throw out this last question. The last few experiences. Okay. So here's the question again. How would you characterize your last few extraterrestrial encounter experiences? What are your beliefs now? Okay, let's start from the lowest rating that it could give them. Okay. The lowest rating was this category. It was a case of abduction of the most negative kind. Okay, 8%. Okay, abduction of the most negative kind, 8%. Now, moving up the category, okay, it was a case of abduction, but of a more milder kind, a slightly more caring kind. That was 12.85%. Let's say 13%. Okay, so it was an abduction, but it was more slightly caring, milder kind. Now, the next category, it was still a case of an abduction, but we're seeking permission. The ET sought the permission. More humane, compassionate treatment. Okay, where the ET sought permission, and there was a very humane, compassionate treatment of them. 8%. Okay? Now, this next body here totals, someone do the math here for me, 36 plus 34. Is that 70%?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let me start with the first one, which is 36.55. Okay? You are not an abductee, but a contactee, where you are being treated with respect and understanding. 36.5%. You are not an abductee, but a contactee, where you are being treated with respect and understanding. Okay. Now, the highest category, which is 34.5%. Okay. It is a case of being a conscious contactee, an egalitarian, an equal relationship. Okay. You are very conscious of being contacted, and you're equal with these ETs, how you perceive them, and in your relationship, and equal. There's no difference between Ray Hernandez and this entity. It's equal, okay, and how you are treated. 34.5%. So it's, these are huge numbers. Right. Now, from the first experiences, it wasn't that big of a difference, but there was, some type of a difference. it was basically the category, the first one was 19%, abduction of the most negative kind, versus later on in life, it was only 8%. So it's like an 11% reduction in pure negativity, as their experiences increased. So which is what we're hearing from a lot of experiencers. In the beginning, they're very traumatized. They see their experiences as highly negative, and then over time, it increases to become more positive. So those are just some of the findings with actual numbers. Let me tell you the people that answered that last question. We had 498 individuals answered that question. Okay, so that's a large sample. That's a large sample pool. These are the individuals that have, abduction-related type of contact experiences. And then let me see some of these other interesting findings here. Let me go over this one. Did your ET contact experience change your life in a negative or in a positive way? How much? With one response, meaning that it had the most or a major negative effect on your life, and a 5 being that it had a highly positive effect on your life. So again, this is since your initial contact experience, okay? Now, out of those 744 people answered this question, 321 skipped. So out of 744 people, 4% said there was highly negative effect on changing their life. Okay, it totally changed it, but it was highly negative, 4%. Slightly negative effect, 6.4%. So now we've got almost 10%, actually 10.5% of being negative. Neutral, 17.5%. It was a neutral experience. The next one, slightly positive effect on changing your life, 21.6%. The last category is highly positive effect in changing your life, 50.1%. So what we have is positive, either slightly or highly positive, changing your life. We've got almost 72%. So you see how you're getting how we ask that question in many, many different ways. There's some variations, but still pretty much clear. It's like a 70 to 72% positive responses.
Thank you.
And again, I should have released that information, but it's very important to know how they answered. But we've got our survey filled with tons of these types of responses. Let me throw out one more question. It'll be the last one I'll throw out, with actual data and numbers. We asked them about transformational changes. One question that we asked is that evolutionary forces are already at work, which will transform humanity at large into a more self-aware, spiritually sensitive species. Want me to repeat that again? Evolutionary forces are already at work, which will transform humanity at large into a more self-aware, spiritually sensitive species. 786 answered that question. Out of those, 73 agreed. 20% had no opinion. Only 7% disagreed. So what do you think of that response?
Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say?
Oh, I think that's fair. That's well, that's fair. I'd just like to address the experiencers' days and disclosure very briefly, and suggest, while I have time, that one of the ways I'm an Anunnaki scholar. And the Anunnaki are the people that gave us a very, very special way of experiencing. And that I suggest that experiencers that are open to this actually try that. and that is to have one person to do pairs or even groups, but to have some receivers and some givers, and to get into a highly orgasmic state and to deliberately call for the help of the Anunnaki or those extraterrestrials who are into assisting humanity to become more spiritual and more conscious. I'm saying go into a tantric ritual and allow the channeling of the extraterrestrials. And as far as the actual disclosure, Ray and Karen, your work, of course, is causing major disclosure to occur. And underneath the disclosure, when we start talking about the ET experiences, it's inevitable we're going to find out who committed the murders at Twin Towers and the various wars that have been fomented, and just who those people are. And that's, of course, the resistance from disclosure. And I'm wondering if there's been any pushback, Ray, pushback on you and your organization for this wonderful work that you're doing.
Yes. There has been a major pushback, which it's very, very sensitive. I cannot go into details, but it led to the resignation of two of our physicists because we were talking, some physics work. We did have at one time 5 physicists associated with FREE, and now it's significantly cut back through interference.
Wow.
Well, we're running out of time. We have like 10 more minutes before we run out of time. I just want to mention there recently was a conference in Maine and called Experiencer Speak. And next month, let me get the details, we have a conference in Sacramento. And that's what happened. I got booted because I accidentally hit the wrong button. Called the UFO Con, the Experiencer event, October 24th and 25th. And I will be there with Dr. Lessin. And we're going to have several experiencer groups where we have 3 different facilitators. 4, Dr. Lessin and myself, although he's the principal facilitator with the experiencers. We have Laurie McDonald and Barbara Lamb, who I think is also a member of FREE. Maybe Laurie is as well.
Yes, she is.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are interested in the Experiential Liberation Day. And I know that Mary chatted with Yvonne Smith and several members from her organization, and they're very much interested in joining us. So it's like we've got a good core group, and it's just a matter of logistically taking it to the next step, working as a meeting in a large group for the first time. So I think that's going to happen in the late fall, I think, because Mary's going to be gone away in Europe for about a month. So she's sort of like chairing the experiencer components of FREE. And so when she returns in a month, we would like to be able to have a conference call. Who knows? Maybe I'll have 50 people on the call. People who, representatives from different organizations throughout the world, basically, willing to work on Experiential Liberation Day, so we could flesh out some of the details of what people can do. Most likely targeting for next year. I mean, this year is basically just mentioning the name, throwing out the ideas, meeting in little parties, little groups, just to get the name flowing. But for next year, we're going to be organizing to get something big done for next year.
Excellent. I'm going to have Karen tell us a little bit more. The UFO Con, so the next chance to go to an experiencer event is October 24th in person, but we're going to have the virtual experience with Experiencer Liberation Day, which Karen will tell you in just a minute here. I just want to finish that it's at the Crown Plaza in Sacramento, California, and the link is UFOCon2013.com. And Lorian Fenton is the producer of this conference. And yours truly, I'm going to present my story in full for about, well, not in full, but as much as I can in an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm going to also have a booth there. And I was talking to Misha Johnston yesterday. We did a show.
I had a call with her a couple of days ago, Janet, and she's with us as well.
Wonderful.
Right, she's with us, and she too is going to be at this conference. And there's a lot. I mean, go on the website. There's a dozen or so people that are presenting. Ralph and Marcia Ring are going to be there. Lots of wonderful people. And if you're able to get there, I highly recommend you get tickets because I think it's limited to about 200 seats. And then the next thing, I want to pass the baton back to Karen to talk about the events that are happening on Liberation. What do you call it? Experiencer Liberation Day. Back to you, Karen.
Well, a couple things I want to say is that we're going to have Clarion Radio. That's going to be Thursday, October the 1st. We're going to have some experiencers come on our regular show time, 8 p.m. Eastern, aquarianradio.com. It's going to be great. We're going to talk to various experiencers and myself, and we are going to have something interesting. Anyone who's planning to go to that experiencers conference in Sacramento ought to know what happened at the Experiencer Speak conference in Portland, Maine. 4 blue-skinned beings came to the conference to hear Travis Walton. It was witnessed by 10-plus people. They're all excited about this because they suddenly realized that might have been our, galactic visitors coming. So it might be that some of our galactic visitors will start coming to experiencer conferences. You never know. But anyway, I'm helping Reverend John Polk will tell us about that on that show because he was a witness to that as well. And it's really, really an exciting development. Maybe they'll just start coming and hanging out with us at these conferences. That'd be great. But yeah, that's my bit.
So
go
ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that I'm going to be speaking on October the 17th, Saturday, at the 215 Greater New England UFO Conference in a city called Leominster City Hall Auditorium in Leominster, Massachusetts, which is about an hour west of Massachusetts. And Dr. Rudy Shea is going to be there supporting me and some other friends from Free. We've got Lynn Hartram plans to appear. We've got the individual that's helping us with the website, Ben McGuire. And we've got Dennis Briefer, who is the past chairperson of the John Mack Institute. And he's going to be attending. So, and basically I'm going to be presenting our research study, just to talk formally to talk about all the details, all the components of what we're doing, and maybe throw out a couple of bones here and there, like I threw out tonight, because I can't hold this stuff in, so much,
You can't help yourself, Ray, but we appreciate it.
Yeah, no, but it's just the numbers that I told you are just so exciting,
It is, and this is part of changing the whole paradigm of the world.
Yeah, you're our Gideon. You're sounding the trumpet, boy.
No.
Can I mention one more
thing? About a minute each. Go ahead.
Okay, this is real quick. On Experiencer Liberation Day, meet with somebody face-to-face if you're an experiencer, if you can. Even if you have a cup of coffee, and I live in Texarkana, Texas, get a hold of me on Facebook because we're going to have an event in Texarkana. So it's going to be more than one people. It's going to be a group. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, basically the idea is for that day just to get the date publicized. And the movement, Experiencer Liberation, of trying to get 2 people together, even if it's a phone call, that that you talk to an experiencer once in a while or even more frequently, pick up the phone that day and to mention, look, today's Experiencer Liberation Day. I just want to get on the phone for you. Thank you for listening to me all these years, all these months, whatever it might be. And then start spreading the word around. Call somebody else that has helped you or has spoken with you, and mention the significance of the day. This is a day where we need to come out of the closet, that we need to talk to each other, support each other, that sort of thing. So it's going to start off slowly, but the idea is that once we get together and coordinate, then we'll start be making some major inroads for next year. Excellent. And then again, Lynn Hartram is our coordinator for our peer-to-peer program, and I know that both myself and Karen have been working with Lynn, supporting her. And one other project that we're doing, hopefully we might get it out by the end of the month, is that we're working on a therapist support list, which are licensed therapists, mental health therapists, and unlicensed mental health therapists. We're working with support groups, a list for support groups, and also a list of regression therapists. So we've got these three categories. It's basically, support, clinical support, we've got hypnotherapy, and we've got support groups. So if someone comes to us, which they do quite frequently, they want someone to call to in a particular state, we send them that list, and they could go on that list, and they could call the individual themselves. And instead of us recommending the individual, it's their responsibility to scope them up and try to find out who might be good for them to work with. Because many of these individuals do work over the telephone, like having regressions done over the telephone. A lot of individuals are doing that now.
We do as well.
And also for support groups in your country. Not your country, your city, your area. And if they don't exist, encouraging people to establish one. These are the type of things that...
1 minute, Ray, just to let you know. 1 minute.
Yeah. So, Karen, you want to take it off?
How do people reach you? The website again.
The website... go ahead, Ray.
No, Karen. It's experiencer.org. That's it. Experiencer.org. Go for it, Karen.
Okay, go for Karen. Last few seconds.
Everybody, it's happening. It's time.
That's our music. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Much love and blessings, and aloha.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern in Studio A. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.